playing mountain goat, Harmony?" Kate's voice sliced through the crisp mountain air, her smirk venomous as she nudged Harmony Brooks toward a steep drop on Mount Cascade's rugged trail. The beautiful black nurse, her long hair flowing, caught herself on a rock, heart pounding, as a stranger's strong hand steadied her. Who was he, and what would unfold when their paths crossed again at a gala years later? Welcome to an unforgettable story of resilience and love. Where are you tuning in from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We read every one. What do you think happens next? Will Harmony rise above the prejudice, or will secrets unravel? Subscribe now for more gripping tales and share your thoughts below. Stay with us to the end. Trust us, this journey will surprise you. Hit that subscribe button and join our community. The sun hung low over Mount Cascade, casting a golden sheen across the jagged peaks that pierced the September sky. Harmony Brooks stood at the trailhead, her ebony skin catching the morning light like polished obsidian, her long black hair spilling over her shoulders in glossy waves. A professional nurse, she carried the weight of countless night shifts and life-or-death decisions in her steady hands. But here, on this rugged path, she was weightless. The mountain was her sanctuary, a place where the world's sharp edges dulled, where her pulse synced with the rhythm of the earth. She adjusted the straps of her well-worn backpack, the canvas frayed from years of hikes, and took a deep breath. The air was crisp, laced with pine and promise. Today, she climbed. Alone, not out of loneliness, but choice. Solitude was her strength, her shield. The trail began gently, a soft incline of packed dirt and scattered pebbles that crunched beneath her sturdy boots. Harmony moved with purpose, her athletic frame cutting through the cool morning mist. Her dark eyes scanned the path ahead, noting every root, every loose stone with the precision of someone trained to anticipate crises. Nursing had taught her that, how to see the smallest signs of trouble before they erupted. The mountain, though, was different. It didn't hide its dangers. The steep drops, the sudden switchbacks, the occasional rattle of an unseen creature in the underbrush. They were honest. She respected that. She respected anything that didn't pretend to be what it wasn't. As she ascended, the trail grew narrower, the trees thinning to reveal sweeping views of the valley below. Rolling hills stretched endlessly, their green folds softened by a haze that shimmered in the rising light. Harmony paused at a small overlook, her breath steady despite the climb. She slipped her water bottle from its side pocket, the cool metal grounding her as she took a sip. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant call of a hawk and the faint rustle of leaves stirred by a breeze. This was why she came here. Not for the summit, not for the bragging rights, but for this moment. When the world fell away, and she was just Harmony. Not the nurse who worked double shifts, not the woman who navigated microaggressions with a practiced smile, but herself, unfiltered. She tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, her fingers brushing the silver stud that glinted in her lobe, a gift from her late mother, who'd taught her to find strength in quiet places. "The world's loud, baby," her mother used to say, brushing Harmony's hair with gentle hands. "Find the spaces where it whispers." Mount Cascade was that whisper, and Harmony listened. She slung her backpack higher and pressed on, her boots finding purchase on the increasingly rocky path. The trail steepened, demanding focus. A loose stone skittered underfoot, and she caught herself, her reflexes sharp. She smiled faintly. The mountain tested her, but she was ready. Halfway up, the air grew thinner, the sun climbing higher to warm her skin. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't slow. Her legs burned with the good kind of ache, the kind that reminded her she was alive, capable. She passed a weathered signpost warning of a steep drop ahead, its faded letters barely legible. She noted it, her nurse's instinct cataloging the risk, but her heart wasn't racing. Fear didn't live here. Not yet. She rounded a bend, the trail hugging a cliff face, the valley yawning below. The view was breathtaking, a canvas of green and gold that made her chest ache with its beauty. She stopped again, this time to snap, A photo with her phone, not for social media, but for herself. A reminder of this moment when she felt untouchable. The solitude wrapped around her like a second skin. The hospital, she was surrounded by chaos, beeping monitors, anxious families, doctors barking orders. Here, she was the only sound, the only motion. She could hear her own thoughts, unclouded by the expectations of others. Harmony had always been beautiful, her high cheekbones and full lips drawing attention she didn't always want. But beauty, she'd learned, was a double-edged sword. It made people underestimate her, assume her strength was ornamental. On this trail, though, her beauty was irrelevant. The mountain didn't care about her looks or her skin. It only cared if she could climb. She pushed forward, the path growing more treacherous. Roots twisted across the dirt like veins, and she stepped carefully, her focus absolute. A squirrel darted across the trail, its sudden movement making her pause. She laughed softly, the sound swallowed by the vastness around her. The higher she climbed, the more the world below seemed to shrink, its problems growing distant. She thought briefly of her last shift, 12 hours of stabilizing a trauma patient. Her hands steady as she inserted an IV while the patient's family wept in the hall. She'd gone home exhausted but proud, her purpose reaffirmed. This hike was her reward, her reset. The trail opened to a small clearing, a natural ledge with a view so expansive it felt like standing at the edge of the world. Harmony dropped her backpack and sat on a smooth boulder, letting her legs dangle. She pulled an energy bar from her pack, unwrapping it with care. The first bite was sweet, the crunch grounding her in the moment. She closed her eyes, letting the breeze cool her skin. For a moment, she was just a woman on a mountain. Not a black woman, not a nurse, not a symbol of anything. Just Harmony, breathing. But the mountain wasn't empty. As she stood to continue, the faint crunch of footsteps echoed behind her. Her shoulders tensed, her instincts flaring. She turned, expecting a fellow hiker offering a friendly nod, but the air shifted, heavy with something unspoken. The footsteps grew closer, deliberate, and a voice cut through the stillness. A voice she hadn't heard in years, one that carried the weight of old wounds. It was sharp, laced with a familiar condescension, and it stopped her cold. Harmony's heart quickened, not from the climb but from the past rushing back uninvited. She steadied herself, her hand tightening on her water bottle, and turned to face the source, knowing this moment would change everything. The crunch of gravel under boots grew louder, slicing through the serene hum of Mount Cascade's mid-morning. Harmony Brooks stood poised in the small clearing, her long black hair swaying slightly as a breeze stirred the pines. Her dark eyes narrowed, her nurse's instincts kicking in, alert, assessing, ready. The voice that had pierced her solitude was unmistakable, a sharp echo from a past she'd worked hard to outrun. She turned, her water bottle still gripped tightly, and there she was, Catherine Kate Ellison, striding toward her with the confidence of someone who believed the mountain belonged to her. Kate's platinum blonde hair gleamed under the sun, her green eyes glinting with a familiar malice. Behind her trailed 3 hikers, their designer gear and easy laughter marking them as her entourage. Harmony's stomach tightened, but her face remained a mask of calm, her years of handling hospital crises steadying her. "Well, look who's playing mountain goat, Harmony," Kate said, her voice dripping with condescension, the words landing like a slap. Her lips curled into a smirk, the kind that had haunted Harmony through late-night study sessions at Yale School of Nursing. The group behind Kate snickered, their eyes raking over Harmony's practical hiking gear, her worn backpack, her sturdy boots, as if they were out of place on her ebony skin. "Didn't think you'd be out here alone," Kate continued, stepping closer, her tone mocking. "No one to keep up with you." Harmony's jaw clenched, but she forced her voice to stay even, her words measured. "Just enjoying the view. Kate, you should try it sometime without the attitude." She turned to resume her climb, her heart thudding not from fear but from the weight of old wounds reopening. Kate had always been like this, subtle jabs veiled as jokes, her privilege a weapon she wielded with precision. In college, it was comments about Harmony's scholarships, her grit, her different background, always delivered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Harmony had learned to deflect, to smile back, to keep moving. But today, on her mountain, she wanted none of it. Kate's laughter followed her, sharp and brittle like glass shattering on stone. "Oh, come on, Harmony, don't be so sensitive," she called, her voice carrying just enough to draw her friend's approval. They closed the distance, their footsteps heavy on the narrow trail. Harmony kept her pace steady, her boots finding solid ground, but the path was tightening, the cliff face looming to her right, a steep drop yawning to her left. She could feel Kate's presence behind her. Too close, the air thick with unspoken challenge. Harmony's fingers tightened around her water bottle, her senses heightened, every nerve attuned to the moment. The trail curved sharply, forcing the hikers to single file. Harmony led, her focus on the uneven terrain, but Kate's voice persisted. "You always were so serious, Harmony. Lighten up, it's just a hike." The words were casual, but their edge was deliberate, a reminder of every time Kate had dismissed her, diminished her. Harmony didn't respond, her silence a shield, but her mind raced. She remembered the late nights in the library, Kate's group whispering as they passed her table, the way her name was left off group project credits despite her work. She'd risen above it, graduated with honors, built a career saving lives, yet here was Kate still trying to cut her down. A sudden shift in the air snapped Harmony back to the present. Kate was closer now, her shoulder brushing Harmony's, with a force that wasn't accidental. The trail was barely wide enough for one, and Kate's nudge was calculated, her body leaning just enough to throw Harmony off balance. Her foot slipped on a loose rock, her ankle twisting as she stumbled toward the drop. Her heart lurched, adrenaline flooding her system as she threw out a hand, catching a jagged outcrop. Pain seared through her ankle, but her grip held, her body steadying against the rough stone. She exhaled sharply, her breath ragged, her eyes darting to the dizzying fall below, a cascade of rock and root that promised no mercy. Kate stepped back, her hands raised in mock innocence, her smirk unshaken. "Oops, my bad," she said, her voice light but her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Her friend's laughter echoed, a cruel chorus that bounced off the cliff face. Harmony's pulse thundered, but her training kept her grounded. She straightened slowly, testing her ankle. Sprained, not broken, she assessed with clinical precision. Her eyes locked on Kate's, her gaze unwavering, a silent promise that she wasn't the girl Kate could push around anymore. "Watch your step, Kate," she said, her voice low, steady, a warning wrapped in calm. "The mountain doesn't play favorites." Kate's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered, tossing her hair. "Relax, it was an accident," she said, but the lie hung heavy, her friend's stifled giggles betraying the truth. They moved past her, their shoulders brushing the cliff as they continued up the trail, leaving Harmony to catch her breath. She leaned against the rock, her hand still tingling from the grip that had saved her. The pain in her ankle pulsed, but it was the sting of Kate's intent that burned deeper. She'd faced prejudice before, whispers in hospital halls, patients who questioned her expertise, but this was personal, a direct strike from a past she thought she'd left behind. Harmony took a slow sip from her water bottle, the cool liquid grounding her. She could turn back, nurse her ankle, let Kate win this round. But that wasn't who she was. She'd climbed steeper hills than this, faced worse than Kate's petty cruelty. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "They'll try to push you down, baby, but you keep rising." She adjusted her backpack, her resolve hardening like the granite beneath her feet. The trail stretched ahead, unforgiving but honest, and Harmony stepped forward, her limp slight but her stride unbroken. The mountain loomed larger now, its peaks sharp against the sky, and Harmony felt a fire kindling within her. Kate's laughter faded into the distance, but the encounter lingered, a spark that could ignite or burn out. Harmony chose to let it fuel her. She wasn't climbing for Kate or for anyone else. She was climbing for herself, for the woman who'd built a life from resilience and skill, who saved lives in sterile rooms and found peace in wild places. The trail beckoned, and she answered, her heart steady, her eyes fixed on the path ahead, ready for whatever, or whoever, waited around the next bend. The air on Mount Cascade hung heavy with tension, the echo of Kate's mocking laughter, still lingering like a bitter aftertaste. Harmony Brooks stood steady against the jagged outcrop, her ankle throbbing but her resolve unyielding. Her ebony skin glistened with a faint sheen of sweat, her long black hair catching the breeze as she stared down the narrow trail where Kate and her group had disappeared. The cliff's edge loomed to her left, a stark reminder of how close she'd come to falling. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the fire of defiance kindled by Kate's deliberate shove. She was ready to move on, to reclaim her climb, when a shadow fell across the path, a presence, solid and unexpected. "Are you okay?" The voice was deep, steady, cutting through the mountain's quiet like a blade. Harmony turned, her dark eyes meeting a pair of piercing blue ones framed by tousled brown hair. The man stood tall, his lightweight jacket stretched across broad shoulders, a climbing rope coiled over one arm. His face, chiseled and sun-kissed, held a mix of concern and something fiercer, something that made the air shift. He stepped closer, his gaze flicking to the trail where Kate's group had vanished. "That was uncalled for," he said, his tone hardening as he addressed the empty path. "You don't push people on a trail or anywhere else. Back off." Harmony's breath caught, not from the pain in her ankle, but from the stranger's unflinching stand. Kate, just visible around the bend, froze, her platinum blonde hair catching the sunlight as her smirk faltered. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, their laughter dying in their throats. "It was an accident," Kate muttered, her voice thin, unconvincing. The man's glare didn't waver, his blue eyes like steel. "Accidents don't come with smirks," he shot back. "Move on." The group hesitated, Kate's face flushing a blotchy red. Her friends murmured, nudging her forward, and they shuffled up the trail, their bravado crumbling under the weight of the stranger's words. Harmony watched them go, her pulse still racing, but her nurse's instincts kept her grounded. She tested her ankle, wincing slightly, then straightened, meeting the man's gaze. "Thank you," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But I've got this." Her gratitude was genuine, but she wasn't one to lean on others. She'd learned long ago to stand on her own. The man's expression softened, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I don't doubt that," he said, his voice warm now like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I'm Jameson Reed." He extended a hand, his grip strong but not overpowering as she shook it. "Mind if I join you? I'd rather hike with someone who respects the mountain." Harmony studied him, her dark eyes searching his face for any hint of pretense. There was none, just sincerity and maybe a spark of curiosity that matched her own. She nodded, a small smile breaking through her guarded exterior. "Harmony Brooks," she said, "and sure, let's climb." She adjusted her backpack, ignoring the dull ache in her ankle, and started up the trail, Jameson falling into step beside her. The mountain stretched before them, its rocky path a challenge they'd now face together. Their footsteps synced, a steady rhythm against the crunch of gravel and snap of twigs. The trail widened slightly, allowing them to walk side by side, the cliff's edge still close but less menacing now. Harmony glanced at Jameson, noting the ease in his stride, the way his eyes scanned the path with the same alertness she felt. "You hike a lot?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Whenever I can," he replied, his voice carrying a hint of relief as if the mountain was his escape too. "I'm in tech, Silicon Valley. Gets claustrophobic sometimes. This," he gestured to the towering pines and distant peaks, "clears my head." He paused, glancing at her. "You don't strike me as someone who needs saving, but that group, they were out of line." Harmony's lips twitched, a wry smile forming. I've dealt with. Worse, she said, her tone light but laced with truth. I'm a nurse. You learn to handle people who think they're above you. She didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The hospital had taught her to navigate egos, doctors who dismissed her expertise, patients who questioned her because of her skin. Kate's jab was just another in a long line, but it stung differently, more personal. Jameson nodded, his expression thoughtful. Sounds like you're tougher than this mountain, he said, a teasing edge to his voice that made her laugh, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't let out in hours. They continued climbing, the conversation flowing as naturally as the breeze. Harmony shared stories of her work, saving a patient during a chaotic ER shift, the quiet pride of helping a family say goodbye. Jameson spoke of his startup, the pressure of a looming deal, the thrill of building something from nothing. Their worlds were different, but their passion was the same, creating order from chaos, finding meaning in the grind. The trail grew steeper, the rocks sharper underfoot. Harmony's ankle protested, but she pushed through. Her focus split between the path and the man beside her. Jameson's presence was steady, not intrusive, like a partner in a well-rehearsed dance. He pointed out a hidden trail marker. She noted a patch of wildflowers, their small exchanges building a quiet trust. The sun climbed higher, warming their skin, and the mountain seemed to approve, its silence a canvas for their growing connection. As they neared a rocky outcrop, Jameson paused, his gaze fixed on the horizon. This place, he said softly, it makes you feel small, but in a good way, like your problems don't own you. Harmony followed his gaze, the valley sprawling below, a tapestry of green and gold. She nodded, her heart swelling with the truth of it. For a moment they stood in silence, the mountain holding them in its vast embrace. Kate's cruelty felt distant now, a speck against the grandeur of this place. Harmony glanced at Jameson, his profile sharp against the sky, and felt a spark, not of romance, not yet, but of possibility. He'd stood up for her, not because she needed it, but because it was right. That meant something. She tightened her grip on her backpack straps, her resolve renewed. Ready for the summit? She asked, her voice steady, a challenge and an invitation. Jameson grinned, his blue eyes bright. With you? Absolutely. They stepped forward, the trail beckoning, their paths now intertwined, the mountain bearing witness to a moment neither could yet name. The trail up Mount Cascade turned brutal, its incline sharpening as if the mountain itself was testing their resolve. Harmony Brooks and Jameson Reed climbed side by side, their breaths visible in the thinning air, the sun now high and unrelenting. Harmony's long black hair clung to her neck, damp with sweat, but her dark eyes burned with determination, her nurse's discipline keeping her pace steady despite the ache in her sprained ankle. Jameson matched her stride, his climbing rope swaying with each step, his blue eyes scanning the path with a focus that mirrored her own. The rocky trail twisted, upward, strewn with loose stones and gnarled roots, demanding every ounce of their attention. Yet between the crunch of gravel and the rustle of pines, a quiet camaraderie had taken root, their earlier encounter with Kate's cruelty fading into the mountain's vast indifference. The path narrowed, forcing them to navigate a ledge, where the cliff face loomed on one side and a sheer drop yawned on the other. Harmony's boots gripped the uneven ground, her ankle protesting with each step, but she refused to slow. She'd faced worse pain, 12-hour shifts in the ER, holding pressure on wounds while families screamed. This was her domain, where endurance was currency. Jameson, though, was pushing hard, his breath coming in sharp bursts. "You good?" she asked, glancing at him, her voice steady but laced with concern. He flashed a grin, though it was tighter than before. "Just keeping up with you," he said, but his face was flushed, his movements less fluid. Harmony noted the signs, slight, sway, beads of sweat pooling at his temples. Her nurse's instincts flared, but she didn't press. Not yet. They pushed on, the trail climbing relentlessly toward the summit. The air grew thinner, the pines sparser, revealing glimpses of the valley below, a breathtaking sprawl of green hills under a limitless sky. Harmony's heart lifted at the sight, a reminder of why she climbed, why she sought these heights where the world's weight couldn't touch her. They reached a steep switchback, the path littered with jagged rocks that forced them to slow. Jameson stumbled slightly, catching himself on a boulder. "Tougher than it looks," he muttered, his voice strained but still laced with humor. Harmony paused, her eyes narrowing as she assessed him. His color was off, his breathing too shallow. "Take a second," she said, her tone calm but firm, the same one she used with patience teetering on the edge of crisis. She slipped off her backpack, pulling out her water bottle and offering it to him. He took it, their fingers brushing, briefly, and drank deeply, his gratitude unspoken but clear in his nod. The trail leveled briefly, a small reprieve before the final ascent. They walked in silence, the mountain's quiet amplifying the rhythm of their steps. Harmony's ankle throbbed, but she pushed it to the back of her mind. Her focus split between the path and Jameson. He was strong, his broad shoulders and steady gait proof of that, but something was off. She'd seen it before. Athletes pushing past their limits, ignoring the body's warnings. "You do this a lot?" she asked, keeping her voice light, to gauge his response. "More than I should," he said, a half-smile flickering. "Tech life, too much sitting, not enough moving. This is my reset." He gestured to the peaks ahead, but his words were clipped, his energy waning. Harmony nodded, filing away the information. She shared a story of her own. A night in the ER when she'd stabilized a marathon runner who'd collapsed mid-race. His blood sugar crashing. Jameson listened, his eyes bright with interest, but his steps were slowing, his focus drifting. The summit was close now, the trail opening to a rocky plateau bathed in sunlight. The view was staggering. Hills rolling into the horizon, clouds casting shadows that danced across the valley. Harmony felt a surge of triumph, her chest swelling with the beauty of it. She turned to Jameson, expecting to share the moment, but his face was pale, his eyes glassy. He swayed, his climbing rope slipping from his shoulder. "Jameson," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the haze. He didn't respond, his knees buckling as he sank toward the ground. Harmony moved like lightning, her training overriding the ache in her ankle. She caught him under the arms, easing him onto the flat rock of the plateau, her hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Stay with me," she said, her voice calm but commanding. She checked his pulse, fast, thready, her fingers pressing against his wrist with practiced precision. His breathing was shallow, his skin clammy. Low blood sugar, she diagnosed instantly, her mind racing through the checklist. She'd seen it in the ER, in athletes and diabetics alike, the body burning through its reserves too fast. Harmony dropped to her knees, yanking open her backpack. She pulled out an energy gel, tearing the packet with her teeth. "Jameson, can you hear me?" she asked, tilting his head back gently. His eyes fluttered, a faint nod her only response. She squeezed the gel into his mouth, coaching him through small swallows. "Easy, just a little at a time." Her voice was a lifeline, steady and sure, the same tone that had calmed panicked families in sterile hospital rooms. She loosened, his jacket giving his lungs room to expand, and propped his head on her pack to keep him stable. The seconds stretched, each one heavy with uncertainty. Harmony monitored his pulse, her fingers never leaving his wrist, her eyes scanning his face for signs of recovery. The mountain was silent, the wind holding its breath as she worked. Slowly, color crept back into his cheeks, his breathing deepening, his eyes focused, finding hers. "You're incredible," he said, his voice hoarse but warm, a faint smile. Breaking through. Harmony exhaled, relief washing over her. "You owe me a coffee," she teased, her tone light but her eyes still sharp, assessing. She handed him her water bottle, guiding it to his lips. "Small sips. You pushed too hard." He nodded, taking the bottle, his fingers brushing hers again, this time lingering. The moment felt fragile, like the plateau they sat on, suspended, between earth and sky. She sat back on her heels, the summit's grandeur framing them. The crisis had passed, but the weight of it lingered, binding them in a way words couldn't capture. Jameson looked at her, his blue eyes clear now, filled with something deeper than gratitude. "I'm glad it was you," he said softly, and Harmony felt a spark, not of romance, but of connection, raw and real. The mountain stood witness, its peaks sharp against the sky. Harmony packed away the empty gel packet, her hands steady, her heart full. They'd made it to the summit, not just in distance but in something unspoken, something that would carry them down the trail and beyond. The sun dipped low over the city, casting a warm amber glow across the skyline. As Harmony Brooks stepped out of the hospital, her scrubs traded for a light sweater and jeans. Her long black hair fell in loose waves, catching the evening breeze, as she walked toward the small cafe where Jameson Reed waited. The memory of Mount Cascade lingered, the summit where she'd saved him, her nurse's hands steady as she pulled him back from collapse. That day, a spark had ignited. Not yet love, but something alive, something that had grown in the weeks since. Their first coffee date had stretched into hours, stories spilling like the mountain streams, and now, months later, their lives were intertwining, each meeting a step toward something deeper. The cafe's bell jingled as Harmony pushed open the door, the scent of roasted beans wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Jameson sat by the window, his broad shoulders relaxed, his blue eyes lighting up as he spotted her. He stood, pulling out a chair with a grin that made her heart skip, a grin she'd come to crave. "Long shift?" he asked, his voice a low. That felt like home." "Always," Harmony replied, sliding into the seat, her smile softening the exhaustion in her bones. She'd spent the day in the ER, stabilizing a car accident victim, her hands steady despite the chaos. But here, with Jameson, the weight lifted. They ordered black coffee for her, something sweet and frothy for him, and fell into easy conversation. He spoke of his latest venture, a tech startup poised to revolutionize data security, his passion infectious. She shared a story of a patient who'd thanked her with a handwritten note, a rare moment of connection in her high-stakes world. Their words wove together, a tapestry of ambition and empathy, each listening as if the other held the map to a new world. Their dates became a rhythm. Coffee shops, quiet dinners, walks through the city's hidden corners. One evening, they wandered through a park, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine. Jameson stopped by a fountain, the water catching the moonlight, and took her hand. His touch was warm, deliberate, sending a shiver through her. "You make this city feel less lonely," he said, his voice soft but weighted, his blue eyes searching hers. Harmony's breath caught, her heart unguarded for the first time in years. "You make it feel like home," she replied, and the words felt like a confession. Raw and true, their weekends grew bolder, day trips to coastal towns, evenings at jazz clubs where the music pulsed like their own heartbeats. Jameson admired Harmony's resilience, the way she carried the weight of lives saved and lost with quiet grace. She was drawn to his sincerity, the way he listened without judgment, his tech world bravado softened by a vulnerability he shared only with her. One night, over takeout in his sleek apartment, he admitted the pressure of his upcoming deal, a billion-dollar merger that could make or break his company. "I'm not scared of failing," he said, his voice low, "but I'm terrified of losing what matters." His eyes held hers, and she knew he meant her. Harmony opened up too, sharing the scars of her past. Microaggressions in nursing school, patients who doubted her because of her skin, the constant need to prove her worth. "I've always had to be twice as good," she said, her voice steady but laced with old pain. "It's exhausting, but it's who I am." Jameson reached for her hand, his grip firm. "You don't have to prove anything to me," he said, and the words landed like a balm, soothing wounds she hadn't realized still bled. Their bond deepened through small moments, cooking breakfast together, laughing over burnt pancakes, hiking local trails, her ankle now healed, their steps in sync. Each shared glance, each brush of hands, built a bridge between their worlds. Harmony felt seen, not as a nurse or a symbol, but as herself, her strength, her humor, her heart. Jameson found in her a partner who grounded him, her calm a counterpoint to his restless ambition. One crisp evening, a year after their mountain meeting, they returned to Mount Cascade. The trail felt different now, charged with memory. They climbed slowly, not racing but savoring, the pines whispering secrets only they understood. At the summit, the same plateau where Harmony had saved him, Jameson stopped, his breath steady but his eyes intense. The stars glittered above, a canopy of light over the darkened valley. He took her hands, his fingers trembling slightly, and dropped to one knee. "Harmony," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You're my summit, my safe place, my everything. I want to build a life with you, not just moments. Will you marry me?" He pulled a small box from his pocket, revealing a ring that caught the starlight, a simple band with a single diamond, elegant and unpretentious like her. Harmony's heart swelled, tears pricking her eyes. She thought of her mother who'd taught her to find strength in love, of the mountain which had brought them together, of the future, vast and possible. "Yes," she said, her voice clear, unwavering. "Yes, Jameson." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands steady now, and pulled her into a kiss that felt like a vow. The mountain stood witness, its peaks silent but approving, the stars a quiet celebration above. They lingered at the summit, wrapped in each other's arms, the world below distant and unimportant. As they descended hand in hand, Harmony felt a shift within her. She wasn't just the nurse who saved lives, or the woman who'd risen above. Prejudice. She was Harmony Brooks, loved fiercely, wholly, by a man who saw her as his equal, his partner. The trail stretched downward, but their path was upward, toward a life they'd build together. The city lights beckoned as they reached the base, but the glow in Harmony's chest outshone them all. She was no longer climbing alone, and that, truth unshakable, was hers to carry forward. The ballroom of the Yale Club shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, their light fracturing into 1,000 tiny stars across the polished marble floor. Harmony Reed, née Brooks, stepped through the arched entryway, her sapphire gown clinging to her curves, accentuating the elegance of her ebony skin. Her long black hair cascaded in soft waves, catching the light as she moved, a vision of grace that turned heads. 2 years had passed since her proposal atop Mount Cascade, and now, as Jameson Reed's wife, she carried a quiet confidence, her nurse's poise honed by love and triumph. The Yale Nursing School reunion gala buzzed with alumni, their laughter, mingling with the clink of champagne flutes, but beneath the polished veneer, Harmony felt the weight of eyes, some admiring, others calculating. She was no stranger to such scrutiny, but tonight it felt different, sharper, as if the past were waiting to pounce. Jameson stood beside her, his tailored tuxedo accentuating his broad shoulders, his blue eyes scanning the room with the same alertness he'd shown on the mountain. His hand rested lightly on her lower back, a silent anchor in the sea of old money and older grudges. The room was a tapestry of privilege, deans, donors, and former classmates, their smiles as curated as the floral centerpieces. Harmony's gaze swept the crowd, her nurse's instincts cataloging faces, postures, intentions. Then she saw her, across the room, near a gilded mirror, Catherine Kate Ellison. Kate's platinum blonde hair was swept into an elegant updo, her green eyes as sharp as ever, her lips curved in a smile that didn't reach them. Their history, those cutting college jabs, the shove on the mountain, hung between them like a storm cloud, ready to break. Harmony's pulse quickened, but her face remained serene, her years of navigating hospital politics and patient crises stealing her. She leaned into Jameson, her voice low. "Kate's here," she murmured, her eyes never leaving her old rival. Jameson's hand tightened briefly, his jaw setting. "She doesn't get to ruin this," he said, his tone soft but resolute, a promise forged in their shared history. They moved through the crowd, greeting colleagues and professors. Harmony's smile warm but guarded. She was no longer the student who'd endured Kate's barbs in silence. She was a wife, a professional, a woman who'd claimed her place. Yet Kate's presence was a splinter, a reminder of battles fought and scars earned. The bar was a polished mahogany haven, its bartender pouring with practiced ease. Harmony approached, ordering a sparkling water, her voice steady despite the weight of Kate's gaze. She felt it before she saw it, Kate gliding toward her, her emerald dress catching the light, her smirk as sharp as a scalpel. "Well, Harmony," Kate said, her voice a syrupy drawl. "Still climbing mountains to prove yourself? Some things never change." The words were a blade, slicing into old wounds with surgical precision. The nearby alumni turned, their conversations faltering, drawn to the tension like moths to a flame. Harmony's grip on her glass tightened, but her smile didn't waver, her nurse's calm a shield. "Some things do change, Kate," she replied, her tone even, her dark eyes locking onto Kate's, "like learning who's worth my time." The retort was measured, but it carried a weight that made Kate's smirk flicker, her confidence shaken. The crowd around them stilled, sensing a shift, a power play unfolding in the glittering ballroom. Harmony stood tall, her gown shimmering, her presence commanding. But Kate leaned closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You'll always be the outsider, no matter how pretty the dress." The words stung, but before Harmony could respond, a shadow fell across them. Jameson stepped forward, his presence like a storm breaking the horizon. His blue eyes were ice, his voice low and cutting, a blade of its own. "What doesn't change, Kate, is your need to put others down," he said, each word deliberate, slicing through the hum of the gala. The room seemed to contract, eyes turning, whispers halting. "Harmony's my wife, and she's worth more than your petty games. You might want to watch your words, especially since I'm the lead investor in your husband's startup." Kate's face drained of color, her lips parting but no sound escaping. Her green eyes darted to the far side of the room, where her husband, a nervous tech founder in a slightly ill-fitting suit, chatted with investors oblivious to the confrontation. Jameson's words hung heavy, their truth unassailable. He was no mere bystander now, he was a billionaire whose influence could reshape fortunes, and Kate knew it. Her smirk vanished, replaced by a tight, forced smile, her confidence crumbling like brittle glass. She muttered something incoherent, an apology, an excuse, and retreated, her heels clicking rapidly as she melted into the crowd, her entourage trailing behind. Harmony's heart raced, not from Kate's words but from Jameson's unwavering defense. She squeezed his hand, her fingers warm against his, her smile radiant. "You didn't have to," she said softly, her voice thick with gratitude. "But I'm glad you did." Jameson's eyes softened, a warmth breaking through the steel. "I'll always have your back," he said, his voice low, a vow renewed under the chandelier's glow. He pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead, and for a moment, the room faded. The alumni, the whispers, the weight of Kate's malice. It was just them. A unit forged on a mountain and solidified here, in the heart of a world that had once tried to diminish her. The music swelled, a slow jazz melody that invited couples to the dance floor. Jameson led Harmony forward, her gown flowing like ink across the marble. They moved together, his hand steady on her waist, her head resting briefly against his shoulder. The gala continued around them, but it felt distant, irrelevant. Kate's retreat was a victory, but it wasn't the one that mattered. Harmony felt it in her bones, the strength of their partnership, the unshakable truth of her worth. She was no longer the girl pushed to the edge of a trail or a classroom. She was Harmony Reed, loved, seen, and whole. As they danced, the chandeliers cast their light across her face, illuminating the fire in her dark eyes. The room watched, some with admiration, others with envy, but Harmony didn't care. She had claimed this space, not by force but by presence, by the quiet power of being herself. The gala's shadow had tried to pull her back, but she stood in the light, Her husband by her side, her story hers to write. The Yale Club ballroom pulsed with the aftershock of Jameson Reed's words, the air thick with unspoken tension as Catherine Kate Ellison retreated, her platinum blonde updo vanishing into the crowd like a fading specter. Harmony Reed stood at the center of the storm, her sapphire gown shimmering under the chandelier's fractured light, her ebony skin glowing with a quiet fire. Her long black hair framed her face, a cascade of strength that matched the resolve. In her dark eyes, Jameson's hand remained in hers, his grip a steady anchor, his defense of her still ringing in the silence that followed. The gala's polished facade had cracked, and the eyes of alumni, donors, and professors darted between Harmony and the spot where Kate had stood, their whispers a low hum beneath the jazz melody that tried, and failed, to smooth the moment. Harmony's heart thudded, not from Kate's venom but from the weight of Jameson's stand. Fierce, unyielding, a declaration that she was not just his wife, but his equal, his everything. She squeezed his hand, her fingers warm against his, and met his blue eyes, now softened with a love that made the room feel small. "You didn't have to," she said, her voice low, threaded with gratitude, "but I'm glad you did." Jameson's lips curved, a smile that held both warmth and steel. "I'll always have your back," he replied, his tone a vow, his kiss on her forehead a seal. The crowd around them shifted, some returning to their conversations, others still watching. Their gazes a mix of awe and unease. The dance floor beckoned, the jazz swelling into a slow, sultry rhythm. Jameson led her forward, his hand firm on her waist, her gown flowing like liquid night across the marble. They moved as one, their steps a silent conversation, each turn a reaffirmation of the bond forged on a mountain and tested here, in this glittering arena of old wounds. Harmony's pulse steadied, her nurse's calm grounding her, but her heart soared. She was no longer the outsider Kate had tried to paint her as, no longer the student who'd swallowed slights to survive. She was Harmony Reed, and with Jameson by her side, she was untouchable. Yet Kate's shadow lingered, a splinter in the moment. Harmony caught sight of her across the room, hovering near her husband, a wiry man in a slightly ill-fitting suit, his nervous laughter betraying his unease among the gala's elite. Kate's face was a mask of forced composure, her green eyes darting toward Harmony, then away as if she could erase the confrontation by sheer will. Harmony's lips twitched, not with malice but with a quiet triumph. Kate had underestimated her again, and Jameson's revelation had shifted the ground beneath her. He wasn't just a defender. He was a billionaire whose investment held Kate's husband's startup in its grip, a power that made her retreat inevitable. As they danced, Jameson's voice broke through her thoughts, low and intimate. "She's not worth your energy," he said, his eyes searching hers. "You're more than this room, Harmony." She nodded, her smile soft but fierce. "I know," she said, her voice steady. "But it feels good to see her squirm." He laughed, a deep, warm sound that vibrated through her, and for a moment the gala faded, the clinking glasses, the murmured deals, the weight of old grudges. It was just them, swaying under the chandeliers, their love a fortress against the Primon. The music slowed, and Harmony rested her head briefly against Jameson's shoulder, her hair brushing his jaw. She felt the eyes of the room, some warm, some wary, but they no longer mattered. She thought of her mother, whose gentle hands had taught her to stand tall, to find strength in love. She thought of the mountain, where Jameson had first stood, for her, not as a savior, but as an ally. Now he stood as her husband, his defense a public claim that echoed in her bones. She lifted her head, her eyes locking with his, and saw the same fire that burned in her, a shared resolve to face any storm together. Across the room, Kate whispered to her husband, her gestures sharp, her face tight. Harmony caught the moment, her nurse's instincts reading the panic in Kate's posture, the way her husband's eyes widened, glancing toward Jameson. The power dynamic was clear. Jameson's influence wasn't just personal, it was a force, that could reshape futures. Kate's husband nodded hastily, his hand on her arm, pulling her toward a quieter corner. Harmony almost pitied her, but pity was a luxury she reserved for those who deserved it. Kate had chosen her path, and tonight it had led to a dead end. The dance ended, the music fading into polite applause. Jameson guided Harmony off the floor, his hand never leaving hers. They paused near a marble pillar, its gold trim catching the light, and he leaned in, his voice a whisper. "You okay?" he asked, his eyes searching hers for any trace of doubt. She smiled, her heart full. "More than okay," she said, her voice a quiet thunder. "I'm free." The word felt like a release, a shedding of the weight she'd carried since college, since the mountain, since every moment she'd been forced to prove her worth. The gala continued, its rhythm stuttering back to life. A professor approached, offering congratulations on Harmony's recent work in the hospital, her reputation as a nurse shining even here. She thanked him, her poise effortless, but her focus remained on Jameson, on the unspoken promise between them. Kate's presence was a distant hum now, a footnote in a story Harmony was writing herself. She glanced at her husband, his profile sharp against the ballroom's glow, and felt a surge of gratitude, not just for his defense, but for his belief in her, unwavering and whole. As they moved toward their table, a waiter offered champagne and Harmony accepted, the glass cool against her palm. She raised it to Jameson, her smile a spark. "To us," she said, her voice soft but resolute. He clinked his glass against hers, his eyes never leaving hers. "To you," he replied, and the words carried the weight of 1,000 summits climbed together. The ballroom spun on, but Harmony stood still, her heart anchored in the truth of who she was. A woman loved, a woman seen, a woman who had claimed her place, not by force but by fire. The Yale Club ballroom faded behind Harmony Reed as she stepped through the heavy glass doors, the echo of clinking glasses and strained laughter, giving way to the hum of the city night. Her sapphire gown shimmered under the streetlights, her long black hair swaying with each deliberate step, her ebony skin catching the glow of the urban dusk. Jameson Reed walked beside her, his hand a steady warmth in hers, his tuxedo crisp but his presence softer, a quiet strength that anchored her. The confrontation with Kate had left its mark, but not as a wound, rather as a spark that had ignited something unshakable within her. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of rain and exhaust, and as Harmony descended the stone steps, her heels clicked like punctuation marks, closing one chapter and opening another. The valet line buzzed, with town cars, their headlights slicing through the twilight. Harmony paused at the curb, her dark eyes lifting to the towering facade of the Yale Club, its windows aglow with the gala's fading revelry. Once, she might have felt small beneath such grandeur, a nurse out of place among the elite. But tonight, she felt expansive, her heart as vast as the city sprawling before her. Jameson's defense had been a shield, but it was her own strength, forged in hospital wards, on mountain trails, through years of rising above, that made her stand tall. She was no longer the woman pushed to the edge by Kate or anyone else. She was Harmony Reed, and she belonged. "Ready?" Jameson asked, his blue eyes catching hers, a smile tugging at his lips. She nodded, her own smile radiant, a fire kindled by love and truth. The driver opened the car door, but before she stepped in, Harmony turned back, her gaze lingering on the building. It wasn't a fortress anymore, just bricks and glass, a place that had tried to define her but failed. She felt no anger, no triumph, only freedom, a lightness that made her chest ache with possibility. The city pulsed around her, alive with horns and laughter, and she breathed it in, the air clearer, softer, as if the night itself was celebrating her. They slid into the car, the leather seats cool against her skin. Jameson's hand found hers, again his thumb tracing small circles, a silent conversation. "You were incredible in there," he said, his voice low, warm, like a fire on a winter night. Kate didn't know what hit her. Harmony laughed, the sound bright, unburdened. She never does, she replied, her tone playful but edged, with truth. But it's not about her anymore, it's about us. Jameson's eyes softened and he leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that felt like a vow renewed, a promise that they'd face any storm together. The car wove through the city, its lights a kaleidoscope of neon and gold. Harmony leaned against the window, her reflection a shadow against the glass, her ring glinting under the passing streetlights. She thought of her mother, whose gentle hands had brushed her hair, teaching her to find strength in love. She thought of Mount Cascade, where she'd saved Jameson, where their story had begun. Those moments had built her, but this one, leaving the gala, leaving Kate's malice behind, was hers alone. She wasn't climbing to prove herself anymore. She was living, fully, fiercely, as herself. The driver turned onto a quieter street, the city's chaos fading to a hum. Harmony glanced at Jameson, his profile sharp against the dim interior, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice soft, curious. He turned to her, his smile a spark in the dark. "That I'm the luckiest man alive," he said, his words simple but heavy with truth. "You make everything better, Harmony. You always have." Her heart swelled, the words landing like a gift she hadn't known she needed. She squeezed his hand, her fingers intertwining with his, a silent thank you for seeing her, for choosing her, every day. The car slowed, pulling up to their hotel, a sleek tower of glass that mirrored the city's ambition. Harmony stepped out, the night air cool against her skin, her gown rustling as she moved. The doorman nodded, but she barely noticed, her focus on the man beside her, on the life they'd built. They crossed the lobby, its marble floor gleaming, and took the elevator to their suite. The doors closed, sealing them in a quiet world of their own, and Harmony felt a rush of gratitude for Jameson, for their love, for the woman she'd become. Inside the suite, the city sparkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a canvas of light and shadow. Harmony kicked off her heels, her bare feet sinking into the plush carpet, and turned to Jameson. He loosened his tie, his eyes never leaving hers, a smile playing on his lips. "Dance with me," she said, her voice a soft challenge, a spark of the mountain's defiance. He laughed, pulling her close, and they swayed, no music needed, their rhythm born of a year of shared moments. Breakfasts burned, trails conquered, nights spent dreaming aloud. As they moved, Harmony's thoughts drifted to the gala, to Kate's defeated retreat, to the way the room had shifted under Jameson's words. She'd spent years proving herself, to professors, to patients, to a world that often saw her skin before her skill. But tonight, she hadn't needed to prove anything. She'd stood in her truth, not as a nurse, not as an outsider, but as Harmony Reed, loved and whole. The weight of Kate's malice had dissolved, replaced by the certainty of her place, not just in this room, but in the world. The city hummed beyond the glass, its lights a reminder of the life waiting for them. Harmony rested her head against Jameson's chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. "We're unstoppable, aren't we?" she murmured, her voice a mix of wonder and resolve. He chuckled, his arms tightening around her. "With you? Always." The words were a promise, a horizon stretching beyond the night, beyond the city, beyond the battles they'd faced. Harmony stepped back, her eyes bright, her smile a beacon. She didn't look back at the gala, at Kate, at the past. There was no need. The future was here, in the warmth of Jameson's gaze, in the strength of her own heart. She was home, not in a place but in herself, in their love. As they stood together, the city glittering below, Harmony knew this was her new horizon. A life written not by others' rules, but by her own truth, unshakable, and hers alone. Thank you for joining us on Harmony's incredible journey in Bice. Evie, A Scent of Harmony. Her story of resilience, love, and triumph is one we hope resonates with you. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for your truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Your stories inspire us to keep telling these powerful tales. Don't miss out on more. Subscribe now and hit the bell to catch our latest videos. Let's keep this community growing, bold, and fearless. Until next time, stay true, stay seen, and we'll see you in the next story.